The Peasants Revolt began during this time in 1381. The 14th century marked many steps towards capitalist agriculture. The stock and land lease and enclosures for sheep farming made land a field for the investment of capital from which a return could be obtained. With the development of production and new class antagonisms, it isn't surprising that the beginnings of a class struggle on a national scale occurred in England.
In this lecture we are going to discuss all these. Stay connected with us, but before that please subscribe our channel for more informative videos and do not forget to hit the bell icon.
The Lords were attempting to recover the power they lost following the Black Death and a consequent scarcity of labor. A poll tax was imposed in 1380 in an attempt to push the peasants and laborers back into the serfdom they were slowly ascending. It was from these conditions that the Great Society arose, a nationwide body with an organization that included the collection of money to pay the fines of its members in activities and prepared a program of demands which gave a unified character to the Rising of 1381. A.L. Morton. By the spring of 1381, the Great Society began preparing for an armed revolt on a national scale. The revolt, for that time, was incredibly planned, which is shown by its widespread character and the unanimity of the demands. In late May, villagers in South Essex attacked and killed tax collectors. They took to the woods and sent out messages asking for support. Revolts then followed at Dartford, leading to the capturing of Rochester Castle and Canterbury. By this time the revolt was widespread over England, with manors being stormed and especially hated lords and lawyers being executed. A concerted march on London began. Inside, the rebels had many supporters and poured into the city unopposed, taking over much of London. The king and his ministers took refuge in the Tower and on the Friday met with the rebels at Mile End in promise to grant all their demands. At the same time, the Tower was stormed and the treasurer and Archbishop Sudbury, who as Chancellor was regarded as responsible for the poll tax, were taken out and executed. After the Mile End meeting, most of the peasants returned home satisfied. Others stayed to see whether the pledges given were carried out. It was at this point that the weakness inevitable in any peasant uprising shows itself. The peasants could combine for long enough to overthrow the ruling class, but had no means of exercising permanent control over the policy of government. A peasant state was impossible because the peasants were bound sooner or later to disperse to their villages, leaving the state apparatus in control of the landlords. A.L. Morton, A People's History of England. The lords and their followers returned from hiding to take their revenge. The promises made twice by the king were repudiated, and the people of England learned not for the last time how unwise it was to trust the good faith of their rulers. The royal army began a bloody process over the areas that rose. Hundreds were slaughtered without a trial, and when the people of Waltham pleaded the promises made at Mile End, they were answered with, "Serfs you are, and serfs you will remain." Although the rising had failed, there was no complete return to the old conditions. The lords had been badly scarred. In 1382 a new poll tax was placed only on the landowners. In 1390 the attempt to keep wages at the old level were abandoned. The decades after 1381 saw a series of minor risings and unions continuing to exert pressure for higher wages and for the commutation of services.